speaker is Dr. Ian Fulham, Associate Professor at the Institute of Agriculture and Environment, Massey University. And his co-topic for us today is, and we heard a little bit from him yesterday, understanding the sediment pathways from slope to channel in steep terrain. Dr. Ian.
Yesterday was some confusion in terms of geomorphology and what geomorphology represents, and if anyone has a term that will be translated into terra, I'd be very interested in your ideas in terms of explaining what it is. The form of the land, the form of the river, Puka-awa perhaps, is what we're talking about here. What I want to talk about is, I guess, elaborating on from Mike's talk, and also connecting with Dave Ann's talk last night, to understand the pathways the sediment takes from the slopes, from the catchments, into our channels in our steep terrain. So, a bit of outline to start with. We'll talk about what we mean by steep terrain, the sort of process, the sediment cascade, the movement then of material from the slopes, off the slopes, into our channels, into our rivers, which is ultimately determined by a term we're going to call catchment connectivity. And again, this was mentioned yesterday, understanding the connections, the connectivity within our catchment, the linkages within our landscape. And I want to illustrate that then by going to the catchment next door, we've already been introduced to in the Waipoua, and looking in a bit more detail at what is, I guess, both bad and ugly and awesome in terms of the Tarndale Gully or Tarndale Slip. Drawing some conclusions from that, and then some implications for the catchment where we're located, the Uruguay, and how we might take things forward. So what do we mean by the sediment cascade, steepened sediment cascade? It's basically illustrated here. So we have a production zone in our headwaters, we have our transport zone, transfer zone in our middle reaches of our catchments, and then we have our deposition zone down at the bottom end. And we can illustrate this just by driving up the Uruguay yesterday, for example, and we can see these different process domains. And so, within this cascade, understanding some of the pathways in this cascade, well, what are we dealing with in these steep landscapes? We're dealing with short catchments, steep catchments, which are very effective in the way that they convey sediment from source, slopes, to sink, floodplains, channels, floodplains, and ultimately the coastal plain. And these catchments respond very rapidly to environmental change. So you have storms, individual discrete storm events can have impacts here very readily, as we've seen, and as a number of you will have experienced with Cyclone Bola in 1988. So landscape sensitivity in our terrain is very high. And so this means that these catchments, these steepland catchments, are very vulnerable to potential climate change. We talked a bit about this yesterday, in terms of the trajectories of climate. How is climate forecast to change? Does it mean there's going to be more storms? What will that do? How will that impact upon these short, steep catchments? Well, they are very vulnerable to climate change. And so Mike's already talked about this. Gullies then in these steepland terrains, landslides in these steep terrains, very important mechanisms of generating sediment then, increasingly vulnerable where you've got clearance, as we've just heard. In some places, these processes combine. We have gullying and mass movements in the same place. And this is where we introduce our Tarndale Gully system, a gully mass movement complex. You've got gullying, you've got mass movements, you've got debris flows, you've got slides, it's all happening in these complexes. And this is important because we need to understand that the sediment that's being generated here connects then with the channel. To what extent or how does it connect with the channel, and why is that important? And so the concept of catchment connectivity is where we're looking at these linkages between slopes and channels, and then when the sediment has been transferred from the gullies, from mass movements down into the channels, how it connects then reach to reach to reach. And Damon was talking about the Waimata last night, talking about this catchment acting as a chute. So effectively what goes in at the top gets funneled through, flushed through, out to the coast, which is why you have such a problem with slash and so on at the coast. And so connectivity then, both what comes off the slopes into the channels and what goes down through the channels, is actually very critical to the way our steepland catchments are functioning and how they operate. So what is catchment connectivity? It's basically looking at the coupling between the slopes and the channels and how effectively material links then from slopes to channels and then down through the channel system. And steepland systems, generally speaking then, are well-connected systems. And so if we look at the Waipoa, and if we look at the Tarndale Gully complex again, shown here on these slides, so at the top of the Waipoa catchment, we've got if you probably can't make it out, but the T in the middle there is the Tarndale Gully, so this is from Mike's maps of the gullies here in the Waipoa. Why is that important? I've already mentioned that the sediment yield then, 15 million tonnes in the Waipoa. 3% of that is derived from this single gully complex, right? Which is astonishing in terms of you think of how large that area is, right? From that small black dot in the catchment, that's generating 3% of the total sediment yield of the Waipoa to the ocean. Quite phenomenal statistics here. So what have we got? We've got a gully here which feeds into a fan, and it's effectively it's a microcosm of a catchment. So we can look at the Tarndale slip and gully and fan, and we can see that effectively as a laboratory for the way our catchments are well connected, our steepland catchments function. So we've got this fluvial mass movement gully complex, we've got gullies, we've got landslides going on, we've got different areas contributing then down into the fan and down into the river system, just like you would have in any catchment effectively. The process rates, there was a road going across here, across the Gully Divide 10 years ago, it's no longer there. We've actually got a bit of an arete balancing act to get across the top for those with a good head for heights. That material there, the sediments coming off the gully, is being fed directly down into the system, into the channel system. And what's happening then is that these channels, the fan effectively is filling up with sediments which is being supplied from the gully. So we have effectively a store here, again analogous to what's happening in our floodplains. So we're storing sediment. We saw this yesterday. The fact that the sediments the floodplains are accreting, they're filling up with sediment. And what we have then superimposed upon our infilling of our fan is also cutting of our channels. So we've got a bit of a balancing act here. So in some periods the fan, the channels are filling up, the floodplains are filling up, other times they're cutting down. So they're up and down, up and down. And so we can see this fill on the left, cut on the right. How long does it take? Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. What we've done then is in a fan, the channels then, which are being fed by this gully complex, we have mapped these over a period of time. And this next sequence of slides basically shows cutting, so channels here which are 4 or 5 meters deep, which is shown in red in these slides, and then they get filled in, which is shown in the blue. So we have red to blue, cutting and filling. Not sure what that's in it. Obviously hit something which I shouldn't have hit. It has encountered a problem with these devices. Right, okay. It's my fault. Okay, so what we've got then is different parts of the gully feeding these different channels, and they are cutting and filling. And how long does it take to cut a 4 metre deep channel? About 3 or 4 months in this system. How long does it take to fill a 3 or 4 metre deep channel? About 3 or 4 months. So we've got incredible rates of sediment supply in this system, a very rapidly responding channel, effectively, in this microcosm of our catchment. And so we can look at this and we can basically put together a model, if you will, of the connectivity, the connections between the gully system and the fan and the stream. And what's important here to note in terms of the connectivity in this steep terrain is just how well connected these systems are. So the lines, the thickness of the lines indicates the degree, the strength of connection, and so we can see that there is it's pretty much connected all the time from the gully to the fan, the sort of into the triangle there, and then to the stream. Also, only maybe 2 or 3 occasions where there isn't connectivity between the fan and the channel. So somewhere in this catchment, in this microcosm of the catchment, somewhere in the gully system, there's erosion processes feeding sediment into the fan, and the fan is also connecting then with the stream. And so what we can look at in terms of the coupling then, the connectivity, is that the cutting and the filling of the fan, the cutting of these channels, the refilling then, reflects then the connectivity with the different sources in the center of in the gully system. And sometimes there's erosion in one area and sometimes there isn't, and it switches and it changes, but there's always something coming out of the system from somewhere, it would seem. And modified then by these critical junctions then, between the gully and the fan and the channel. So we're dealing with a highly connected system, strongly coupled. The effects of change within the gully complex are transmitted down onto the fan fills up or the fan cuts down, depending on the sediment supplied to it. In terms of the erosion processes here, what's dominant, we have, as Mike's already referred to, gullies, we have debris flows, we have deep-seated landslides, we have shallow landslides, and we can look in more detail at this gully complex. We can do what's using a technique using laser scanning and produce a high-resolution model of the gully system. And we can look then at the processes that are operating here and do a sort of whole system mapping. And again, you can see it's analogous to a catchment. It has this sort of the drainage basin and leading down into a sort of a channel system and then out into the stream network itself. So, in terms of what are the most important processes, so the purple here is where you've got the gullying, the rilling, the greens here are where you've got more mass movement dominated processes. The reds here represent erosion of the gully system, the blues represent filling up, so you've got erosion predominantly in the gully, and we've got filling up on the upper part of the fan, and the channels then cut and fill as we've seen. We can sort of quantify the process. You won't be able to see this, but again, the purple links in with the purple gullying. Again, so the gullying is the most important process in this system. How much material is going through the system, how much is actually making it through to the stream network, but it changes. So again, the connectivity, the connections, the sediment transfers from our gully complex into our fan, through to our stream network, is quite variable. It varies from between, in terms of the buffering, in terms of the hindrance then of material working its way through, it varies from 40% to 0%. So in other words, you can have up to 40% of material coming off the gully system is buffered, is stored in our channels before it reaches the stream network, or we might have all of the material effectively being transferred like a chute all the way through to the stream network. So again, what this shows us is the variability in these sort of processes and how our catchments change and might be subject to different influences and different processes at different times. So between about 60 to 100% of sediment being generated from the gully system actually connects to the stream. which is, and that is quite a complex series of processes and patterns. So I want to draw these things to a conclusion. First page of conclusions. Catchment connectivity, what we're looking at in terms of sediment transfers, may amplify or modulate the nature and the propagation of our response to perturbation, to storms, or to climate change in future. What the Tarndale system, I think, demonstrates is, that, again, the complexity of this. And so if we were to look elsewhere and sort of scale up to other catchments, we would recognise then that to understand the transfer of sediments then through our steepland terrain and steepland catchments, we have to recognise the complexity and the operation of these sort of critical junctions or nodes within the landscape that John Tunnicliffe is going to be talking about a little bit later. So steepland cascades are rightly perceived then as sensitive and responsive to disturbance, to storm, discrete storm events, and ultimately climate change trajectories. Second page of conclusions. The question of residence time. So Mike talked about this in terms of the legacy. So there's been all this sediment coming off the slopes, it's filled up the valleys. In the same way that we've seen the Tarndale fan buffer the sediment coming off the gully complex. So our floodplains are buffering then what's coming off the catchment. They're filling up. And there is then, as Mike's indicated, going to be decades, centuries of reworking of this material. Even if we were to switch off all of the slope erosion sources today, we would still have issues of sediment in our rivers for decades, centuries to come, as that material gets worked out. Does that mean we shouldn't do anything? No, of course not. It means we have to act sooner rather than later. We have to act with a degree of urgency to recognise this legacy sediment. The impact of extreme events then, like Cyclone Ebola, may be enduring then for a number of decades. So we may get disturbances which may have a long-lasting impact. And so to take proper account of these factors, we really need to take a long-term perspective. We really need long-term planning. We need to recognise the complexity in these steep and high-energy terrain systems, and ultimately recognise that we're going to have disturbance events then in these systems. And the magnitudes and frequency of these disturbance events may also be changing as climate changes. We need to take that into account. So bringing that home to where we are situated now, how do we understand, how could we use this information, this knowledge, to understand the Uawa? Well, I think we need to understand the connectivity in this catchment. We need to understand what it was in the past, what it is today, what it might be in the future. Where is the sediment coming from? Where are the key points, erosion points, the transfer zones, the storage zones? Which leads on to looking at floodplain histories. We discussed some of this down on the riverbank yesterday, looking at flood histories. What is the context for processes today? What were they in the past, not only pre-European, but pre-human occupation? So what was the landscape like? What were the systems like before anyone of our ancestors arrived? And then also linked with that then sedimentation rates, how have they changed, and how has the channel changed in response to that? And ultimately, I hope that this would lead to a holistic, a whole catchment approach, a connected catchment approach to river management, which really is required to future-proof our river rehabilitation. Thank you.